It was a night the city would never forget. The glass towers glowed against the midnight sky, but inside one of those towers, in the corner of a lavish office, a woman who seemed to have everything was on her knees, trembling like a child. Victoria Hale, the untouchable CEO known for her icy brilliance, whispered into the empty silence, "Please, don't leave me here alone." Her voice cracked, her mascara smeared down her porcelain face, and for the first time in years, the walls around her heart collapsed. Outside, a storm raged, thunder clapping against the skyline, as though nature itself wept for her. But destiny has a strange way of answering the cries we think no one hears. Before we go deeper into this unforgettable story of broken walls, hidden pain, and an unexpected savior, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, in love that heals the deepest wounds, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to StoryNest. Because stories like this aren't just tales, they're reminders of the miracles that can still happen when hearts collide. Victoria had built her empire from ashes. The youngest female CEO in her company's century-old history, she was the embodiment of power. Her sharp heels echoed like gunshots in boardrooms, her words could dismantle men twice her age, and her name was synonymous with success. But no one knew what it cost her. Behind every award, every headline, every cold smile, was a woman who had once been abandoned. At just 16, she had watched her father walk out the door with another woman's hand in his, leaving her mother to crumble into despair. And at 23, when her mother died of a broken heart, Victoria had sworn she would never depend on anyone again. People leave. People betray. Success, she told herself, was the only shield. So she worked, bled, and sacrificed until she stood at the top of the world, untouchable, admired, envied. But tonight, in her penthouse office with its citywide view, she wasn't untouchable. She was just a lonely woman clutching the edges of her desk like a lifeline. Her empire was collapsing. A betrayal inside her company had drained millions from the accounts. The media was circling like vultures. And worst of all, the people she thought she could trust, the board members she had protected, had turned against her. They wanted her gone. Alone, powerless, cornered, she whispered to the empty room, "Please, don't leave me here alone," though she knew no one could hear. But someone did. Michael Carter had no business being in that office building past midnight. A single father, a maintenance worker with rough hands and kind eyes, he had been covering a night shift to earn extra money for his daughter's school. He had passed the executive floor by accident, but when he heard the faint sound of a woman's sobs echoing down the marble hallway, something inside him refused to keep walking. He pushed open the half-closed office door and saw her. The most powerful woman in the city, collapsed on the floor, fragile as glass. For a long moment, he stood frozen. He had only ever seen her face in the news, heard stories of her merciless brilliance, her steel heart. Yet here she was, undone. And though every instinct told him to leave quietly, something in her broken whisper chained his feet. He stepped forward. The storm outside wailed louder as if to seal the moment. Victoria raised her head and saw him, and for the first time in years, her mask slipped entirely. He was no board member, no rival, no man with hidden agendas. Just a stranger with gentle eyes who looked at her as though she were human, not a CEO, not a headline, just a woman drowning. Michael didn't ask questions. He didn't pity her. He simply held out his hand. And though it terrified her, Victoria reached for it. From that night, something shifted. At first, she resisted. The woman who built walls higher than skyscrapers didn't want to admit she needed anyone. But Michael, simple, grounded Michael, was patient. He started small. A cup of coffee left at her desk in the early morning. A gentle reminder to eat when she worked herself half to death. A quiet, steady presence when the world outside roared for her downfall. He didn't try to fix her problems. He just stayed. And for a woman who had spent her whole life being left, that was everything. Still, the war outside raged. The board meetings grew uglier, the media louder. Secrets leaked, rivals whispered, and every headline painted her as a failure. But the more the world tried to strip her crown, the more she discovered something she had never known, strength in being vulnerable. Because with Michael, late at night, when the city quieted, she let herself be real. She laughed, sometimes through tears. She listened to his stories of raising his daughter, of working 2 jobs to keep food on the table. She admired his resilience, his honesty, his refusal to give up no matter how heavy life was. And slowly, she began to believe that maybe love wasn't just betrayal waiting to happen. Maybe love could be steady, kind, healing. But the world doesn't reward vulnerability easily. When the truth of her partnership with Michael leaked, when photos of the CEO with a lowly maintenance worker hit the tabloids, her enemies pounced. They mocked her, questioned her leadership, painted her as reckless and distracted. The board demanded she step down. For a moment, she wavered. For a moment, she thought of letting go. But Michael stood by her. He told her the words she had needed to hear all her life, that she was not defined by abandonment, that she was not weak for needing someone, that she was, in fact, stronger for having the courage to let someone in. And for the first time in her life, Victoria fought not just for her company, but for herself. She rose in the boardroom with fire in her eyes and steel in her voice, defending her vision, her choices, her right to lead. And though she bore the scars of betrayal, she stood taller than ever, not because she was unbreakable, but because she had learned she could be broken and still rise. In the end, she didn't just save her company. She saved herself. And when the storm cleared, when the skyscraper lights reflected a calmer night, Victoria found herself standing hand in hand with Michael and his daughter, a family she never thought she'd have. For once, she wasn't begging anyone not to leave. She had found people who had no intention of ever walking away. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even the strongest among us sometimes need saving, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe to StoryNest. Your support keeps these powerful, heartfelt stories alive. And before we end, here's a special request. Tell us in the comments, do you believe even the loneliest hearts can find love again? Because sometimes, the stories we share here aren't just fiction, they're reflections of the second chances waiting for us all.